Peace, brothers and sisters. Welcome to another broadcast of I Have a Testimony. I'm your host, Brother Willie Muhammad.
God came to us to seek and to save that which was lost. He raised a man from among us.
He, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, laid the foundation. What I'm doing is something that comes from him through me, and the thing that he uses in me to do the work is my faith in him and the word that he taught. To produce men and women who wanted to clean up their life and build an independent nation for the glory of God.
Welcome back, brothers and sisters, and we thank each and every one of you all for tuning in to another broadcast of I Have a Testimony. So this is a special broadcast. 18 years ago, here in the city of New Orleans, we experienced a very devastating loss, right, in the form of what is known as Hurricane Katrina, which the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan described as an act of man and an act of God. For this broadcast, we want to highlight the generosity of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. And the reason why we're doing this is because we want to tell our story. Because if we don't tell our story, no one else will. And to help us to do this, we have three great believers here. All of them are here from the city of New Orleans. Then two of them are in different cities right now. But they have contributed much to this mosque that we have here in the city. And you're going to hear their personal testimonies. But before we get into that, I would like to talk about one of the many acts that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan did to help those who were impacted by Hurricane Katrina, and even to help the Black community here in the city. One of the things the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan did was to fly the Final Call newspaper staff here to the city of New Orleans and to get them to do a documentary. And in this documentary titled Unmasking New Orleans, the purpose of this documentary was to get the sides of the stories out from people who were impacted by Hurricane Katrina that we were not hearing about on the news. So if you haven't had the opportunity, you probably can find this documentary online. It's called Unmasking Katrina. If not, you can purchase it from the Final Call bookstore at www.finalcall.com. But here's a clip from that documentary. And right after that, we'll get right into this interview.
Mardi Gras, with its raucous reveling and festive parades. For 150 years, Mardi Gras has been the frolicking face of fun that masked a racial and social divide in New Orleans that most of the nation and the rest of the world hardly ever saw. But that all changed on August 29, 2005, when Hurricane Katrina brought the full force of her wrath down on New Orleans, unmasking it and revealing its desperate and disadvantaged poor and forgotten. The world watched in horror as thousands of disadvantaged New Orleanians waited, some perilously perched on rooftops, begging for help, pleading to be rescued from a swirling brew of toxic water as high as 15 feet or higher.
Wow. So, as I said, If you want to hear more or watch more of that documentary, make sure you go and check it out at thefinalcall.com. So I want to introduce our guests, and I want to give each and every one of you all. So first we have our sister Rhodesia Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, dear sister. Then we have our brother Mujahid Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, my brother. Then we have our brother Roosevelt Muhammad. Walaikum salam, family. And we thank each and every one of you all for taking the time out to be a part of this show. And so I want to start the interview off first by just having you all just share a bit about how you came to the Nation of Islam. And we'll go in this order. We'll start with Sister Rhodesia, then we'll go with Brother Mujahid, then we'll come back with Brother Roosevelt. So Sister Rhodesia, can you begin by telling us, I know you were actually, I don't want to give everybody, you were born in the Nation of Islam, but I know you'll tell that. So we'll hear your testimony first, my dear sister.
So I'm third generation Nation of Islam. My grandparents, my parents, and now me. How I came to accept for myself was in 1997. And just a little backstory, my dad joined the Nation of Islam when he was at Dillard University in New Orleans. And Dr. Khalid was speaking. He heard Dr. Khalid speak and was mesmerized and was like, I want to hear more about this. He ended up joining, and then my grandmother was a devout Christian at the time. And he went home one day and told her, man, you got to hear this. I want you to come to the mosque with me. And she was against it, against just the idea of going somewhere outside of her Christianity. But she went, and when she went to the mosque and she heard the teachings, he said they got in the car. She was real quiet. And he was, a bit afraid to bring it up to see what she thought or whatever. He was a little scared because she was so quiet. And so he said he girded his loins and was like, so what did you think of the lecture? And she didn't say anything. And then she said, that is closest to the truth that I've ever heard. And he actually brought my grandmother into the nation. So I grew up under Islam when I was in college. I started feeling like I have no idea either. I have no recollection of why I started to feel like I needed more spirituality. We had my family still abided by the laws of Islam, but we weren't actively going to the mosque. So I, for some reason, started feeling like, okay, I need some more spirituality here. And the church wasn't an option because it wasn't what I knew. I wanted to go to a mosque. I didn't know of any mosques in New Orleans at the time. And just so happened, I was by an ex-boyfriend of mine's home, and his cousin came over, who we called Brother Peter. He came over, he had a suit and bow tie on, and I was like, this is divine intervention, because I was looking for it, but I really, this was, of course, before, I think it was before cell phones and social media and all of that, where you could just type in and find out what's happening. So he came by with a suit and bow tie on, and I was like, like, where's the mosque? Asking him all kind of questions, and he told me, invited me out, and I came to the mosque. The only thing was, I had so much going on. I was like the president in my sorority. I had a boyfriend, all these things going on that I thought I would have to give up if I joined the Nation of Islam. I was limited in my understanding because when we were practicing it, I was too young to even understand. But the older I got, the more I was interested in hearing more about this Islam. So I went to the mosque, And, you know, it brought back memories of when I used to go to the mosque. It was a little different, but I just wanted to get a deeper understanding of Islam. So I came to the mosque, and my first day there, you know, anybody who goes to the mosque for the first time, it feels like it's different. It's really different. And I just wanted, it didn't matter. I just wanted to see what was going on in this place. And so I would go, went the first day, loved it, fell in love. And I feel like from that moment, it was like I was, what's the word? Where you feel like this is your calling. This is your calling. I was like, okay, convicted. I felt convicted from day one that I could not walk away from this. But every week, every Sunday, I would come to the mosque and I would feel like, okay, this is going to be the day I accept myself and become my own. This is the day. But every Sunday, I was too afraid when they get to the end of the lecture and they're asking you if you believe that this is good and right for our people, raise your beautiful black hand. I could not do it. I couldn't do it. So for maybe 4 to 5 weeks, I was feeling that way. Then it came to a point where it was a Sunday morning, and I had said to myself, this is the day I'm going to accept. And I was praying about it. I was like, God, show me a sign that this is the right thing to do. Show me a sign. And so I'm looking around physically for some type of sign that I was doing the right thing. So I'm driving to the mosque and I'm waiting on a rock to hit my windshield or a bird to land on my car, something that says I'm going to do this today and it's right for me. So I get to the mosque and we're almost at the part, we're almost at the end, and I'm still like struggling and looking for that sign. So just so happened, Brother Roosevelt was teaching that day. And when he was closing out, he said, so Black men and women, this is the day to join the Nation of Islam. He said, don't wait a week or 2 or 3 weeks, a month, a year. Today is the day. And I'm like, oh my God, that's my sign. I'm looking for a spooky sign. And here it is, right plain in my face. And when they said, are you ready to join on? Accept your own and be yourself. My hand went up. And from that moment on, I've been rocking with the Nation of Islam.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you for that, that testimony, my sister. So, Brother, I didn't know that. Brother Roosevelt, I ain't gonna say you his fish, but he watered the seed and now he was able to get in.
He did. I've told this story before, but I don't know if he remembered that. But is Brother Peter the person that fished me in?
It's both of them. Like the scripture said, God plants and they water the seed. But we thank you for sharing that powerful testimony. And now we're coming up to our next brother. You heard our sister Rhodesia share hers, and now we up to our brother Mujahid. So Brother Mujahid, how did you come to be introduced to the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
So I'll say after I graduated in 1990, I went to SUNO only because it was just a socially, you graduate, you go to college. It was a thing to do. But after a semester, I realized that that's not what I wanted to do. So I dropped out. I had a little penny ante job and just, in the inner city streets, just doing what we do. But I wanted something better. I just longed for something better. So I considered the military, not that it was better, but it was like a Hail Mary option. Back then, you didn't have a podcast. You listened to a $1 million person and this program and that. If you lived in the hood, you just lived in the hood and you knew what you knew. So I didn't know how to start a business or anything like that, but I wanted a better quality of life. So I figured that the military would give me that opportunity. So I joined the Navy, and it was in the Navy that they had religious classes every Sunday that they would allow you to go to. And for some reason, a friend of mine and myself, we said, let's go check out the Muslim service. I had no inclination toward Islam prior to that. I couldn't tell you what the Quran was, who Prophet Muhammad was, or anything. But we just decided, we just intrigued. So I remember going, and I remember seeing the Arabic on one side and the English on one side, and the Imam was talking and sharing Islam, and we were just very, very intrigued. So when we got back, the DI, he was a little frustrated because it inconvenienced him to bring us to the Muslim service as opposed to bringing everybody to the church or the Christian service and come back. So he said, look, y'all can't go to that service because y'all not Muslims. Y'all need to go to the Christians. So we said, we ain't Christians either. You know, we young, we rebelling, we 19, 20 years old. So now we were going on spite alone. We said, well, we can't go. We really gonna go. So we went every Sunday until boot camp was over. And when it was over, the Imam, he took us to a mosque and he showed us how the Muslims prayed and shared some different things. But I found a library, and in that library, I stumbled across a book by Dr. Maurice Bucaille called The Bible, the Quran, and Science. And I read that book from the time the library opened to the time it closed. And in that book was just scientific arguments substantiating the truth and the strength of Islam and exposing some of the weaknesses of what I believe. As growing up in a Catholic school 5 years, a lot of things that I was taught and exposed to was being, broken down plainly in front of my eyes, thinking that the Bible was one book, only to learn that it was an encyclopedia of books, and that many of the authors were not eyewitness and testimonial persons or followers of Christ directly. And there was just several atoms that were being broken. I was convinced. I was like, I knew that something special had happened, and this was the direction I was going to go in my life. So my first tour was in Japan, Yokosuka, Japan, on the USS Independence. So I decided that I was going to be this imam and fostering and bringing Islam. There was no Muslim services at the time. And so I was teaching Islam, but there was another brother. His name was, we called him Ahmed or Ahmad. And he was under the philosophy and ideology of the Nation of Islam. And so we would bump heads in the lunchroom. Every time we would go to lunch, we would go to war. And I barely knew. I was following Orthodox Islam at the time. So I barely knew what I knew. And plus he had the teaching. So it got a little frustrating. I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to study the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So next time we come together, I'm going to be able to, make him look some kind of way. But lo and behold, that was a door of no return in a good kind of way. And at the same time, I'm traveling the world. So we're showing up in Australia, and I learned about the Aborigines and how they were displaced in a similar manner like the Indians. And then I show up in Hong Kong and learn about the Opium Wars and all these different places. Everywhere the white man has been, that country has been dismantled and turned upside down because of their presence and interaction with the European. So I'm studying and seeing this all at the same time. I'm traveling the Muslim world, and that's where I learned how to call the Adhan and get acquainted with the Bible. And so as I'm leaning toward the nation, it's unfortunately, me and Brother Ahmed, we never saw each other on the NOI side. He never knew that I joined the NOI because as my faith got stronger and stronger in the nation, my tour was ending. It started so I had to get out the nation. So I'm a little disappointed that we never got a chance to meet each other. But I went back home and got with the friends who I left, and of course they wasn't feeling Islam. Everybody. They was laughing at me. They said I was crazy. I was brainwashed, So after a certain point, I just kind of hid the light and I blended in with the environment. And I went back to doing what we did. But in my heart, I knew that I was a Muslim, and I knew I had something special. I knew I had something that I could argue the world with. I'm in my young 20s, but I had arguments that I can go talk to these faith leaders and people that was respected in the community, but I didn't have a vehicle of expression. You know, in the neighborhood, it meant nothing. So I just kind of buried it until I would go to the mosque every now and then. And I had one foot in the mosque, one foot in the grave, as we would say, or in the world. And I met my wife, Angel, in the world. And we started to get close. And I said, look, let me tell you something. Before we decide to do anything, I need you to understand something about me. Like, what? I said, I'm a Muslim. And she was like, well, what's that? And so I began to share with her and teach everything I learned from Sunni Islam, I was following Sheikh Ahmed Didat and all the arguments he shared, and a little bit from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and talking about how Jesus wasn't crucified and the facts to substantiate it, and the arguments of the Bible, and how the chronological order of the creation was not scientifically and mathematically correct. And she was just listening. Little did I know that she had Islamic influence from an uncle that she was raised around, and then her dad raised her to be what many would call pro-black. So I was talking into fertile soil. So she was like, that makes sense to me. So took her to the mosque. Lo and behold, she stands up. Now I just took her to show her where the Muslims at. We wasn't supposed to, but she stood up. And so the next week I stood up, and then we from there we just built a life, raised our children and our family to follow the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and the rest is history.
Wow, and you've never come back across that brother?
No, never. I know he don't know that he was the spark and that brought me to the other side.
Well, I pray a lot that he sees this with this modern technology, man, that he finds out to hear that testimony. And thank you for sharing that. And our next brother whose testimony we're going to hear, we're bringing up, is our brother Roosevelt Muhammad. So, Brother Ro, and show how did you come to the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
Man, I came to the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. One day, I was on my way to one of my stash houses that I had in Skyview, where we used to keep our drugs. And Brother Jermaine Muhammad, he got in front of my van and stopped me. In my van, I had 4 15-inch woofers on 2-punch 650s. So every time I would pass, the music would shake all of the walls in the mosque. So Brother Jermaine got in front of my van and he stopped me with his hand. He put his hand out and stopped me. And I rolled the window down, my pistol cocked, and I said, man, what's your problem? He said, brother, could you please turn your music down when you come down this street, because it's about to knock the pictures off the wall in the mosque. I said, all right, man, I'm going to do that. And then he said, well, brother, would you like to come out and listen to some of the lecture? And I looked at him, I said, man, I can't come in there. Y'all niggas killed Malcolm. And he looked back at me, he said, brother, I ain't had nothing to do with that. I'm only 19 years old, brother. I wasn't even born. And that made so much sense to me. I said, all right, bro, I'm going to come and listen. And so I rode around a corner, and I was in front of my stash house with a few of my partners smoking no car. And a young brother named Brother Robert, he was a teenager, was coming out of his door in a suit and bow tie on his way to the mosque. So I looked at him, and then I looked back at my partners, and I hit the guard, and I passed it to them. They said, where you going? I said, I'm going with him. They said, man, don't go around there. They're going to brainwash you. I said, man, I told them people I'm coming, I'm going around now. So I ran and caught up with little Brother Robert. And he said, where you going? I said, I'm coming with you. He said, man, you can't come in the mosque smelling like a pound of weed. I said, man, the people around the corner told me I could come. He said, all right, they just see if they're going to let you in. And lo and behold, they let me in. I went into the mosque, and Minister Harold done a lecture that night called Use a Hoe in the White Man's Hill Pencil. And man, that was the night of my life. I left out of the mosque, basically that night I was converted. I went back around the corner. The first thing came out of my mouth to my friends, man, we ain't nothing but a bunch of hoes and a white man pimping us. And he said, I told you they was going to brainwash you. I told you. And from that day forward, I was addicted to the mosque. I would make it to the mosque before the believers would be there. And I only had a problem because at that time, I had a contract out on my life. So when I would come to the mosque, I would have my gun, but I couldn't bring it in, so I was kind of paranoid. But I would leave it in the van. And every time I would come to the mosque, it would be so empowering. We was doing some studying on self-improvement. It's the basis for community development, the self-improvement study guides. So it opened me up to starting to improve myself. And so I just was addicted from that point. A few months later came Savior's Day. It was Savior's Day in October. And so the brothers wanted to go to Savior's Day, but they didn't have no money. So I said, brothers, we're going to Savior's Day. They said, how we going? I said, we're going to drive my van. And he said, well, we ain't got no money. I said, well, I'm going to pay everybody wait. They said, what? So me, Brother Roderick, a whole band, there was so many of us, but we just got in the van and started our route all the way to Savior's Day. But I still wasn't in trust mode because the time I'm on my way to Savior's Day, I'm driving and under my spare tire I had my big old 44 pistol. And I'm saying, man, if these Muslims try to do me like they did me, I'm going to kill all of them. But by God's permission, we got to Savior's Day. And the minister lecture was so powerful. I witnessed Minister Farrakhan teach the Crips and the Bloods. The name of the lecture is Healing the Wounds. And I watched grown men in red and in blue cry. I had never witnessed men cry. And these men were crying and forgiving each other. So I left LA with the determination to come back home and do what I saw done with the Crips and the Blood, with the brothers I was beefing with out of the Seven Ward in Uptown. So when I got back, I got to a mutual friend that knew both sides of the beef and sent a message to the side that I was beefing with and told them I want out. I don't want to kill any of y'all. If y'all leave me alone, I'm going to leave y'all alone. And all my friends would say, man, you crazy? You trust them boys? I said, man, listen, I trust God. And from that point, they gave a message back that they wasn't going to beef with me. And it was over with for their part. And if it's over with for me, they don't got no problem with me. So I just came in the mosque and fell in love. And a few months later, I was out selling papers, and a brother three young brothers rolled up on me with guns on Diamond and Chef. And my pager kept going off. And I'm looking at the pager while I'm selling papers. I never would check my pager, but it kept going off. So I said, man, let me see what this is. I stopped, went to the payphone, called the person back, and it was the brother who I had asked to do the mutual, agreement between. He said, man, where you at? I said, I'm on Diamond and Chef. He said, boy, you better get your ass off of Diamond and Chef. Them boys gonna kill you. I said, damn, them boys just left the corner. So they were supposed to kill me right then and there. But the two in the other seat didn't know me. The only person who knew me was the driver, but he kept calling, asking me my name. And I said, my name, Brother Roosevelt X. He said, man, what's your name? I said, Brother Roosevelt X. And before he can come to the conclusion that I was the dude he was looking for named Micey, the light turned green and they took off. So after that incident, I went back to the mosque and told Minister Harold what had happened. So he took and told me I had to go on what you call sabbatical. I didn't know what the hell it was. And I couldn't sell papers no more. And I had to come to the mosque, and the only thing I could do is come to the mosque, go to Winn-Dixie, get your food, and go home. I said, man, I'm not letting them boys punk me. I'm not doing that. He said, well, brother, if you can't listen to me, you can't be in the nation. And I was like, uh-oh. So I said, all right, I'll do it, which was the greatest blessing of my life, because now I had undivided attention to studying. At that time, January the 10th, 1993, I got hooked on phonics. In October the 10th, 1993 is when I made the decision after witnessing Minister Farrakhan is to make the decision to come into the nation for good. And so I had the chance to just study. So everything that I have, which is what called basic knowledge, began in the Nation of Islam. And
Praise
I've
be
been in
to
the nation
Allah.
since then.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you for that. Thank each and every one of you all for those actual testimonies, man. And we really appreciate what you all shared. And I know for sure that it's going to inspire those who are going to see. And listen, we haven't even gotten to Hurricane Katrina yet, and we've heard 3 dynamic testimonies. And so in this next question, I want to talk to you all. We're going to start transitioning to, Katrina. And we're going to go in this order. We'll go back with starting with Sister Rhodesia, then we'll go to Brother Mujahid, then we'll come back to Brother Roosevelt. So I want you all to talk about just that whole decision to evacuate, leading up to Hurricane Katrina, making that decision to evacuate. And even if you can also add into that, what are your thoughts when you were away, seeing the state that the city had fell in as a result of that particular storm? So we'll start with you, Sister Rhodesia.
I don't even know where to begin. When I was asked to do this, my thought, I felt like there was a block. Like I couldn't remember much about what happened that weekend. And the more I started to think about it, I was like, I really went through it and had no clue. Our body holds stress when we don't know it holds stress. And I had no clue just how much my body was holding stress until it manifested itself physically. But I'll say, leading up to Hurricane Katrina, it wasn't a big deal because we had been through this so many times before. No one, and people have to understand with hurricanes, if you don't live in a state or a city that has hurricanes, you don't quite get it, because a lot of people didn't understand why a lot of people didn't leave. Well, one, if you don't have transportation, that's hard to do. Some of my trips out of town to evacuate, and we'll say Hurricane Katrina, you talking about 1 hour trip to Baton Rouge from New Orleans that took us 8 hours. There have been times where we've evacuated and it has taken us 12 hours in a short distance. So it's not easy just picking up and going out of town. I was in between jobs at the time, but my mind was, we're going to go, we're going to evacuate. We'll be back by Monday before the weekend's out, or Tuesday. I can't remember. I think Hurricane Katrina hit on Monday. But even so, I'm like everybody you've probably heard, I literally got a duffel bag, threw a couple of t-shirts in there, and had planned on, and a toothbrush, and that's it. Deodorant, that's it, with the plan on returning in 2 to 3 days. So when we left, and we left early and still had to sit in traffic that was extremely long. But here's the thing, show you how the spirit of Allah works. My sister, so I didn't have family in New Orleans except my immediate family, my mom, my dad, my sisters, and because none of the babies. So we didn't have like cousins and aunts and stuff that lived in New Orleans. It just was us. And so when we decided, so my sister, who's a doctor of psychology, she applied for a job at Xavier University at the time. And she really wanted that job, but she didn't get it. And it pained her that she didn't get it. But she then applied to Southern in Baton Rouge, and she so happened to get the job. And I'm going to come back to that. So we're packing, getting ready to go to Baton Rouge, which we would not have had a place to go had my sister gotten a job at Xavier. And so that made it easy for us to leave town. Again, I was in between jobs. I didn't have much money at all. You talking about lint in the pockets. And so when we left for that weekend, we got to my sister's place in Baton Rouge. It was 6 of us in a 2-bedroom, which ain't near to what some people had to live with. But it was, you know, it was crowded, but okay, we're going back in 3 days. It'll be fine. When we saw on the news, initially, we were like, okay, we'll be back home in a few days because nothing had transpired but a Category 3, I believe, Category 3 hurricane. So, you know, life just went on. And then the very next day, we're talking about flooding to the rooftops of houses. It was unbelievable. The images going across the screen, it was really unbelievable. People's houses were covered with water. A lot of people drowned. A lot of people who stayed behind, who had no way of getting out of town, lost their lives. And it put me in and people we knew were unaccounted for. So it put me in a feeling of depression, sadness, like it was hard to get out of bed. And, you know, the reality hit when they said, there's no telling when we'll be able to get back into our homes. No one knew the state of their homes. We didn't know if ours was flooded, you know, was there damage? Are we getting looted? We just didn't have any idea of the state of New Orleans at the time when it first happened. As time went on, you know, they started letting people back in by zip codes. And so people were, you know, under pressure all of that time trying to figure out the state of their homes. Now, they had on the news the different areas that was affected, you know, as far as Lower Ninth Ward, New Orleans East. It pretty much demolished the city. But we weren't even sure what we were coming home to. So that feeling in itself was unbelievable. When I go back to that, just seeing the images, you just never expect that. You never expect that. No one in New Orleans, to my knowledge, thought that this would be the outcome. It's just something you couldn't comprehend. And so when we were able to go back into the city to check on, you know, our houses and stuff, and it was a good thing I brought my car, but my mom's home was messed up. My dad's home was messed up. I was the only one that didn't get the water damage. I had wind damage, but not water damage. But then I received one day, because we were trying to figure out, or I was trying to figure out how I'm going to make it these next few months. Because they let you in just to check on your place. It wasn't to go back and live because it was inhabitable. So I was trying to figure out, what am I going to do without money? Finances. Like, that was the worst possible time for me to have to evacuate. That is the worst feeling, having to evacuate and you don't have any funds. FEMA was doing as everybody knows, $2,000 to anybody affected in New Orleans. And I had received that. But then Brother Willie sent out a message. I can't remember, it was a phone call, an email, but you sent some type of correspondence saying.
We're going to get to that part. No,
okay.
We're going to get to that.
Okay.
But thank you. I can see that you're full. But thank you.
Oh
And
my God.
just like you said, you know, people don't understand the financial cost that goes with deciding to evacuate. And if you have a family, do your transportation. It's so many factors, but I never, until the teaching of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we know about fall of America. Now you see in California,
Oh my
and all of my
God.
life, they were threatened with a hurricane and then had an earthquake and then there were mudslides. So we thank you for what you shared. And now what we're going to do to hear more of his another experience, we're going to bring in our brother Mujahid. So you heard what Sister Rhodesia talked about. Can you talk about, if you can mix this all together, you know, that decision to leave, and even the challenges to leave, and even what you lost, right? And even it's like a three-part question, and just your thoughts about what you saw going on in the city of the destruction.
Yes. So, you know, the hurricane season is another day in the park for the, you know, New Orleanians. You know, like when the hurricane, it could be 2, 3, 4 in a season. And you pack up and you go and come back. So like Sister Rhodesia was saying, people can't comprehend the, you know, why would you stay? You know, after you go back and forth several times, you know, sometimes you get frustrated. But I just had a personal philosophy of leaving only because my wife has so much faith in me. If I make a decision, if I say we're going to stay, then she's going to say we're going to stay. And I just hate to be in a position where something happened and I can't defend my family off of a decision I made them decide to make. So in that spirit, we always had the inclination to just leave. And by Allah's grace, we have believers in Monroe, Brother Douglas, known as Brother Amir now, and Sister Lachelle. We told them we were on our way. And so we beat the contraflow. We beat a lot of the drama. We left before the mandatory evacuation. And when everything went down, by Allah's grace and permission, we were in the comfort of his home. But seeing everything, it was just, we didn't know how to digest it. When they said that the city was underwater, we didn't understand what that meant. We didn't know if it was over. Can it rebuild? Where do, you know, our whole life is in New Orleans. It was really an uncomprehendable event. I had a real estate portfolio at the time. So all that portfolio was leveraged by debt. So the tenants paid it. So no tenants, no debt. So that was immediately bankrupt. I remember being on the phone with one of the lenders and they were chiding me on, you know, you need to get your act together, go clean up their property and rent it out. I said, sir, I don't think you understand. The house is not there. The house is not there. I can't I can't renovate it. And then to tell you one further, the block is not there. There's no houses on the block. There is no utility. There's no electricity. So he said, wait, hold on. So he's sitting me up the chain of command several times. I'm saying the same thing to the people. I finally got to the owner, and no one could comprehend the extent of the devastation. I remember asking my mom and my sister, may Allah be pleased with her, she's deceased now, for some resources. They sent me a couple of $100, and I don't want to laugh at that, but they didn't understand the magnitude. That couple of $100 was 1 or 2 nights hotel. That meant nothing. It was a really compromising position. So that whole experience, man, I don't even know how to. I think it went over everyone's head. You know, when Katrina is reduced to one word, Katrina, but inside Katrina is 20 feet of water, but not regular water, toxic water. When you say Katrina, you're talking about people that were left on the roofs. And I had a cousin that was left on the roof, and a neighbor that he knew that was left inside a house. Many of the houses in the Ninth Ward have burglar bars on them. So you can't just get out. And as the water was rising, he was lucky to make it to the roof, but he could hear the neighbor saying, Brian, come help me. But he couldn't do nothing. So he literally had to listen to her voice till it faded, till she drowned. So these are some of the experience, along with the rape and the murder and all the things that were going on. You know, the minister very wisely named it Unmasking New Orleans, because, you know, New Orleans is a city of joy, of laughter, of music and frolic. But I also heard the minister say that when self-interest takes precedence, truth is the first casualty. So Katrina's put us in polarizing self-interest, meaning white folk had a self-interest and we had one. And so it showed the true intent. It showed, they described our sincere intent for food, for shelter, to protect our women and children as looting, as burglary. You know, it was just a whole, there was buses where they had dogs on air-conditioned buses leaving New Orleans, dogs and animals, where we were still on the roofs, in the rooftop. So, you know, I personally speak lightly about the loss because I was on the best of the side of it, honestly. It was a financial loss. It was emotional. It was devastated. But when you speak of Katrina, you got to speak with the utmost respect because people really lost. They lost their lives. They lost their persons, their family. It was an extremely devastating event that was above, it's above comprehension, much deeper than what we try to put on it as just Katrina. From the labeling of the refugees, that's what they called us, the refugees as we travel. It was just a bunch of chaos. But yeah, I'm gonna stop it right there.
No, I remember, man, that's what made us pull up this picture because I remember you sharing your testimony. You were saying, you were just talking about, you were talking when you had the opportunity to go back into the night ward, and you said, man, the only thing that was left on one of your properties just was the steps. And this picture that's on here, this is not Brother Mujahid's picture, but this is just to show you the numerous homes that were just taken up, and it was just the steps that were actually left there. So we thank you for sharing what you shared, man, in a very passionate and articulate way. And we felt that. And now what we're going to do, brothers and sisters, we're going to go to our next brother, and you know, to hear and remind you, these are only a few of the stories, but we're going to hear our brother Roosevelt Muhammad talk about, you know, Roosevelt, your decision to leave, just what your thoughts about seeing the city in the condition that it was in, and what you lost, some of your losses. Excuse me.
My first decision was to stay. And my goal was to stay and help. But then at the last moment, someone called me and said, if you want to stay here and help, you want to save somebody, save me and my children. So I decided to go and do that. I picked her and the babies up, got them in the car, and we started at the last moment on our way to Atlanta. The hell was coming down. And I had never witnessed hell in the magnitude that it was coming down. We were stuck in traffic. I thought I was going to run out of gas, but I was blessed to make it to a gas station. I didn't have nowhere to go in Atlanta. So I called my ex-wife who was in Atlanta, and I said, do they have any places they're letting people from New Orleans come? And her husband got on the phone. He said, man, stop tripping. He said, you come here. And so I said, brother. He said, yes, come here. So we went to Atlanta to my ex-wife's house, and we thinking we're going to just turn right back around and go home. Lo and behold, there was no turnaround. I had just opened up a new business with a few other brothers, me, Brother Calvin, Brother Sharp, and Brother Mike had just opened up a furniture store, and my printing company was connected to the furniture store. And we had just opened. Everything went under. I'm talking about everything. So when I got to Atlanta, I was just like, man, I need to get back so I could get back in my shop so I could get to work. And the news came on, and when I saw the news, I was like, Lord have mercy. Everything was underwater. I'm sitting here, I'm stressed out, just took the last that I had to put in to get the building, and I'm like, man, they gave us $2,000, and that was it. So I went to going into all these FEMA locations trying to get more help. So I went to one location. The lady says, "You can't get any help." I said, "Why?" She said, "You're not in the database." I said, "What you mean I'm not in the database?" She said, "Every time I put your name and your social in, nothing's coming up." And so she kept going back and then coming back. And then she finally come back and asked me, "Have you ever worked?" I said, "No." She said, "That's why you ain't coming up." I had never had a job in my life to make any contribution to the Social Security, or any contribution to taxes. So I was never in their system. So they couldn't find me in their system to be able to gauge me getting a certain amount of assistance from the government. So they said because I had never worked and they didn't have proof that I can show who I was, that they couldn't help me. And lo and behold, that was the end of that. I was sitting in the house stressed out, and that's when I received the phone call that you had contacted me.
We're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into that part. So while we're talking about that, and what we'll do, how we'll do this one, we'll go Brother Mujahid, we'll do back to you, Brother Roosevelt, and then we'll close out with Sister Rhodesia. So while we're talking about that, and several of them were about to talk about it to our family, man, we had the pictures to well, you know something, we do have some of the actual pictures to show what they are talking about. So for the viewers who are watching this, in January 2006, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan came here to the city of New Orleans to witness the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina and to use his voice to fight for the right to return for the citizens here in the city of New Orleans. There's a documentary, not a documentary, there's a lecture that the Final Call has that has footage of the minister touring the Ninth Ward. And when he toured the Ninth Ward, the minister, as soon as we hit that area, the minister broke out in tears because it's just the devastation. It was just something he said you had to see. You can see it, one thing on television, but you had to see it. So in this believers meeting, which was a very powerful believers meeting, you know, the question was asked about assistance for the believers. And thereafter, the minister asked that those who were in need of assistance to go ahead and submit their requests. And these are just three of those who actually submitted their requests for aid or for assistance. So what I think I said, we're going to start with Brother Mujahid, then we're going to go to Brother Roosevelt, and then we're going to go to our sister Rhodesia, who's going to talk about just the assistance that they actually received. And we'll start with you, Brother Mujahid.
So yeah, that whole process was mixed feelings and controversies, because as FOI, you know, we live to contribute to our minister, to our nation, and we interpret that as serving God. So to ask the minister to do something for you, even as legitimate as it was a real mixed feeling and controversy. So you try to be as conservative as you like. I can do without this, I can do without that. You know, if it was a government form, you'd be like, I got this, I need this, I need that. But it was like he was trying to be very conservative. And I remember you knocked on the door and handed me that envelope. And man, when I saw the minister's signature, what I thought about, I said, the minister had to have said my name for at least a few seconds. He had to have known who I was to write. Now, this is the man who we travel in the world to protect. You can't come in this region and we not mobilized to move. And as young men, we were jumping in cars. We didn't have no money. We staying in hotels. Everything was centered around serving the minister. I'm guiding my whole family to follow this man. And now I got a check in my hand with his personal signature on it. Forget the dollar amount. Forget just his signature. It really brought me to tears to know that the minister signed that check, knowing me and my family was in need, and did that for us. But the crowning event, you know, I dealt with a lot of passive aggressiveness as a convert to Islam throughout my family. So being around my dad in one of those type of environments, he said, what did your minister in the Nation of Islam do for you all for Katrina? And when I showed him the check, because I didn't tell him, I just showed him the check, and his face expression, priceless. May Allah be pleased with us. He's not with us today, but from that day forward, he never converted to Islam, but he never challenged my commitment to Islam. He never challenged the minister and who he was, and his respect for the nation transformed in that one seating, in that one setting, that engagement. So it was a very powerful, it wasn't even about a dollar amount for me. It was just the fact. I just was blown away that the minister saw us, my family, me as significant. So that was the impact that the minister's charity had on me and my family.
Beautiful, man, beautiful. And thank you for sharing that actual testimony, because the reality of it is you brought out two points, and I know Sister Rhodesia may talk about this as well. There was a struggle for some believers to even ask for assistance, for a variety of reasons. And then also, like you talked about, other people were watching to see, like, well, what the nation gonna do for you all, right? And as it relates to that. So, but thank you for sharing that testimony. And now we're going to bring up our brother Roosevelt. And as Brother Roosevelt talked about, he had a printing business, right? And he had a business that he was partnering up with other brothers with a furniture business. So Brother Roosevelt, can you talk about, just the assistance that you received from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan?
Brother, I got word that the minister was looking to help us. And I put a number that I was in Atlanta, so I was searching after finding out that help would come to find a way to buy some new equipment. So I found equipment, and it was about, I think, $8-9 grand. And so I said I can use 10,000 and I'll be able to get back on my feet. And everybody around me, my ex and everybody was saying, "You think the minister gonna send it?" And 2 days later, the next day express mail came to the door, and it was a check for $10,000 from Minister Farrakhan. I opened the check up, I looked at it, I said, man, I couldn't believe it. Immediately, once I went cash the check, I went and located some equipment. Didn't have nowhere to put it at the beginning. I bought me a new duplicator, and had to figure out a way to take and find somewhere to put the equipment. So I was debating if I was going to rent a place or find somewhere to do it. So we decided to take the garage that we were staying by my ex with and put it in there. But as I was going through the discussion with them, they were saying, "Why you don't go buy you a bed?" Because we were sleeping on the floor. I said, "He didn't send me the money to buy me a bed. He sent me the money to get me some equipment to start my business again." And I went and did exactly what he sent me the money to do. That was the greatest comeback in my life. That man is the only man to ever aid me, to ever assist me financially. So I'm grateful. And I would like to say that if the minister ever view this, thank you from the depths of my heart, Brother Minister. I have never been able to tell you thank you, but I am telling you right now, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Everything that I have in my life at this moment is predicated on what Minister Farrakhan did for me, because everything that I have financially is based upon that one generosity of service he did to me by giving me the opportunity to rebuild my business. And I've been blessed beyond measure. What he gave me, I have doubled it at least 100 times. I can't say nothing but thank the minister. And he was able to affect a lot of people because many people didn't know that he had the heart to do what he did. They would say, man, you ain't gonna get no help. And the help came. So I'm one of the grateful ones. And every penny I have right now, every dollar I have right now, every bit of equipment I have right now was based upon him giving me a jump start to restart everything that I lost. So I'm one of those grateful men. And I'm in debt to this man for the rest of my life.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you, my brother, for sharing that testimony, man. And we put some of those things up, and these shirts that you're seeing coming across the screen, these are shirts that our brother has produced post Hurricane Katrina, and has used these shirts to allow young men in the city to be able to find a positive means of putting money in their pocket as well. And he and his wife have a printing press and a lot more going on in the city. And inshallah, brother, to those of you all who are watching, not those who are watching this too, but those of you all who are participating in this, you know, it's going to be my goal that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan gets an opportunity to see this actual broadcast. So now we're going to go to our sister. You've heard Brother Roosevelt, you've heard Brother Mujahid, and our sister talked about the difficulty of having to what's the word I'm looking for? Having to evacuate, you know, in the transition of between places of employment. So, Sister Rhodesia, can you talk about your experience in the minister?
I wish you had let me go first this time.
I saw you wiping your eyes.
It's just Brother Roosevelt. It just. So, like I said, I didn't have a job at the time. And we're not talking about, because, you know, I evacuated with my family, but the jobs had halted. This is not where, you know, we all had all this money and we pooled our resources, but no one was working. And there was no paycheck in sight other than what FEMA provided. And everybody know that was $2,000. That's all I got. I don't know about any other funds coming, but that's all I received. And in that, you know, we were buying air mattresses, clothes, food, toiletries, just the necessities that we needed. That money goes fast when you think about all that you lost and all that you need. That takes a while to build back up. And, you know, we were part of I think the blessing was that we had the spirit, me, my father, my sister, we had friends from out of town who were staying with us too. We were watching the news and we were seeing people on the news just in worse condition than we were, with children begging for money. And we would take our FEMA money and go wherever the news said they were, and we were giving money to them, even without having backup. And I would like to think that because of that, there became an opportunity for me to receive more funds. I received a call from Brother Willie, who asked, do you need any type of assistance? The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is Yeah. Excuse me. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is helping financially, helping the believers financially. Man, so many thoughts are going through my head just about how much knowledge he's given us over the years, which was enough to sustain the condition we were in. But then he wants to go and add finances on top of that. And I didn't even know what to ask for. I couldn't even comprehend the loss big enough to know what I even needed more. I just know I didn't want to take much from the minister. It was a hard decision to make. I even got some flack for it. But one thing, and I shared this with Brother Willie, is that, you know, there was a sister one time, I picked her up. We were going somewhere together. She wanted to give me gas money. And I told her, no, keep your money. It's fine. We're going to the same place. No, I'm not having it. She kept trying to give me the money and I just kept refusing it. And to the point where she was hiding it in my car. And I just kept giving it back and we went back and forth. And she's like, Sister Rhodesia, why is it so hard for you to receive? And I'm like, you know, in my head, I don't need this from you. That's fair. But the thing is, how are people who are giving receiving their blessings if they're being rejected every time they try to do something nice? And I thought about that when I started thinking about the decision I had to make to ask Ms. Farrakhan for money. And I thought about it, and I'm like, the man, Allah is all he needs. He don't need money from us. He has a wealth of knowledge that'll last you for eternity. And he's not doing this to get something back, but that's the reality of why he lived in such abundance. Because of everything he has done. And this is just one little chapter. You can't even begin to understand how much finances he spends on the believers, putting people through schools, helping it. You wouldn't even be able to imagine. So when people say, you know, like Brother Mujahid said, people question, well, what the minister do for y'all? Oh my God. We wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for him. Literally walking dead. And so I asked for what FEMA gave because I just didn't know an amount that would really reflect what was needed. But I felt like if I can get by with what FEMA gave, I can get by on what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan was willing to give. Now, I didn't know how much I could ask for. I didn't know. So I just set 2,000 as a standard. And because of, and it came at the right time because, you know, we were almost out of funds when that came. So it was a blessing in so many ways. And one of the things I used some of that money on was getting therapy.
Praise be to Allah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you
Ooh,
for
I made it.
Thank you for sharing what you shared. And I'll say this, and you all can bear witness to this if you think about it. You all have heard the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan talk in private and in public since Hurricane Katrina, and the minister has never publicly mentioned the help that he gave to the believers and others, right? And I would say this, these are only 3 people who are on. I can tell you the financial assistance was in the tens of thousands that was actually given. And when we submitted the names, we didn't get any callbacks to say, well, go make sure they need this, make sure that they're not getting any additional funds, and as it relates to stuff like that. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan gives, and he gives and keeps it moving. As Sister Rhodesia said, I saw in a meeting where his secretary was in tears, and she said how she handles writing the checks, and the minister's writing checks for people who are burying people who need burial, who children, hospitals, of all type of stuff, right? And when we were in LA, we were talking, and we were in the hotel, and Katrina came up, and the minister, this was leading up to 2015, the Justice of Else March, and he said, did we do something for the people in New Orleans? He hadn't even remembered it, because he did it, and he kept moving on. And I told him and reminded him about what he actually did. And in addition to that, the minister talked about how he's able to do charitable things like that because of the charity that we give. And check this out. I don't know if you all knew of this, but I'm going to share this with you all because I didn't know. I was asked to be in a documentary with a local bounce artist, and it's about violence. And while on the actual setting of the filming of it, Brother Brent introduced me to this brother who's a violinist. His name is Michael White, right? And he told me that he met the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan prior to Hurricane Katrina on a Tom Joyner cruise. And because he plays the electric violin, the minister invited him back to his cabin on the boat, and they began to start talking about a violin and music. And he gifted the minister an electric violin. But listen to this. I had the opportunity to interview him because I wanted to get it on video. But I'm playing this video to show that this help to people who were impacted by Hurricane Katrina. The minister used his voice. The minister went on national television, bringing up the question about whether the levees broke. The minister calling out America's hypocrisy. He came here, lended his voice and his popularity to stop them from trying to make the ninth ward into a green space. So we just he traveled to the different the shelters in Houston and Baton Rouge and these different places, inspired others to give. And in addition to all of that, he gave out of his own. And I don't know if you all remember when the minister was asking the believers to open up their homes to take in people who needed shelter. None of us knew that the very thing that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan was asking people to do, that the minister was willing and had offered to do the very same thing. And listen to this video clip. Yeah, that's something. And also, while we were actually there, you talked about how you're from the city of New Orleans and you experienced the unfortunate natural disaster of Hurricane Katrina, but you shared with me something that I had no idea about, how the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, his offer of kindness to you. Can you talk about that?
Well, my family and I we were displaced like everybody else. And he said, Mike, you and your family come up here if you want. I was like, Minister, I need to be close to New Orleans. I got to be close to New Orleans, see what's going on. And so I went to Houston. He said, don't do nothing until you call me. And he helped me out. He gave me help for me get an apartment in Houston for 6 months. He paid for it. And therefore I was able to recover. And, I was so deeply and grateful for him for being so kind and offering that. He didn't have to do that. Wow. So he's just a wonderful man, to be honest with you. And I'm not talking about his religious side. I'm talking about as a person, period.
Yeah. And so you see that. And when he told me that, I had no idea. And that's only one person. So what we're going to do now, we're getting close to the end. But I want to make this point in addition to that, to take this time out to thank those mosques in various cities. Muhammad Mosque number 45 in Houston, for what it did to help those believers who were impacted by Hurricane Katrina. Muhammad Mosque number 15 in Atlanta, for what it did. Muhammad Mosque number 68 in Baton Rouge for what it did. And even I was reading through this article that even for Sean, the garments, this one of our the businesses that make garments for the sisters in the Nation of Islam not donated, well, they gave garments to sisters who were impacted by Hurricane Katrina at no cost at all. So we want to thank them for their help as well. And all of the believers, there's different things that different people did and other cities did to do that. So as we get ready to close out, are there any of you who want to talk about, we talked about what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan did, but there were also some believers, like formerly Brother Eric Muhammad opened up his home for my family. Brother Andrew and Sister Dusty opened up their home for my family. Are there any of you who want to talk about any assistance that the believers actually gave? And I know for sure we'll go with Brother Mujahid, and then if there are any others, we'll do that. We'll come to you, and then what we'll do, we'll close out with you all just giving an update about, you know, what's going on with you all today. So, Brother Mujahid, you want to talk about any of the help that you were given by believers?
Absolutely. You know, I'll be remiss if I didn't mention what Brother Amir and Sister Lachelle did for us. We had our own room. They fed us and were very brotherly and sisterly to us, and we could have stayed as long as we wanted to. But then also we went to Houston and we met Brother Patrick Muhammad and his wife, Sister Chandra, and they allowed us to stay. We stayed there a good, I don't know, like 3 or 6 months. And the hospitality was off the chain. I mean, when Brother Pat let you in the house, he let you in the house. So we walking around, we doing everything like we own the house. But he took care of us and never looked back. He never reminded us what he did for us. And it was the most vulnerable time. As a matter of fact, I think it was like 4 family. I know it was me, my family, Brother Captain Brian and his family. And so we had 3 MGT cooking meals. We had, oh man, it was a blessing. But I pray Allah just bless them 3-4 times over for the sacrifice they made and what they did with us in our most vulnerable times, Brother Patrick and Sister Chandra.
Assalamu alaikum. I would like to give thanks to the mosque in Atlanta. Man, they covered us down. There was nothing that we needed that was not provided. It was the mosque that pointed us in the direction of getting a place to stay. You know, the apartments that we got to move in, me, Brother Theodore, a few other believers. It was the believers in the mosque that facilitated finding somewhere for us to live, and the people giving us an opportunity to live there for the next 6 months, no rent, and so we was able to get ourselves up and running. But if it wasn't for the believers and what they were doing, it was like they took full responsibility to make sure we had what we need, constant calls, making sure everything was going according. And man, I just can't be. It was awesome because it's like you came somewhere and you ain't never, I never had the type of assistance and the type of love that came. Brothers called and sisters is constantly, there were so many sisters working in management that was able to facilitate and get us what we was looking for. So I thank Atlanta so much, especially the minister.
Praise be to Allah. And we'll go to our Sister Rhodesia and any people.
Just the believers, I'm still real full. Just the believers checking on one another during that time, because we were all going through it in one way or another. And you talking about, we grew up together. We all came in, we were really young, and you talking about 20, 25 years, 30 years later, and you still bonded with all of the believers. It's like we grew up together as family. So I'm grateful for all the believers who, just kept checking in on one another, because we were separated. And a lot of that was a cultural shock to us. We were used to going to the mosque on Friday, study group, Saturday class, Sunday, and Monday for the brothers. And it's when that's ripped away, you know, you start to long to be in each other's company again. So we kept each other held high during that time. I'm grateful.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you for that. And before we're going to close out asking each of our guests to just talk about where they are now and some of the things that they're doing. But before we do that, I also want to talk about in regards to let the audience know, these are some of the images of our building that was damaged by Katrina. And you see it, but the water was, if you can see that air condition that's right by the stop sign, the water got high up to that. The whole bottom floor was actually submerged in actual water, right? And you can see it, that the damage of it. And I remember talking with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and the minister said that our rebuilding would be better than it was before Hurricane Katrina. And I have to say that it actually was. This is one of the images of our building now. And this is an image of our building after Hurricane Katrina. I think we had to send this up to Chicago, but it's changed now. It's not even brown anymore. The inside is white. But those of us who've been here from the beginning, you know where we actually came from, and may Allah be pleased with him, with our brother Jabril Muhammad. I was telling somebody that brother Jabril was the reason why we ended up getting central air, because it was hot one time in the mosque, and he hit boom. God damn. I remember that. We was like, we got to get this together. So we remember the days sitting in there with that big old heater blowing fire right out there, but by Allah's grace, we came together. And I want to thank publicly each and every one of you all. I'm telling you, I'm not just saying this but every one of you all who are on this particular web broadcast has contributed to the ingredients that makes this mosque the way it is. And that goes for every believer. And I'm specifically saying you all, because I'm here telling you all. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And now what we're going to do is we'll go in this order. We'll go Brother Roosevelt, we'll go Sister Rhodesia, and then we'll go Brother Mujahid. Just give the people an update about what's going on in your life right now. So what did I say? I said Brother Roosevelt, Brother Mujahid, then Sister Rhodesia, right? That's what I said? Yeah. All right. So go ahead, Brother Roosevelt.
My life is a life of complete joy. I don't have any stress in my life right now at all. I'm privileged to have a striving business that's running, making a way. And I'm blessed to have a youth organization where young people can come and learn how to make an honest living. You know, everything that I was taught by Minister Farrakhan from the book that he put out called the Steal Away Plan. And I use that as a means and a method to help myself. And so I take the same approach, and I'll teach it to young people whenever they come, that they need to be able to steal away from the streets. And I give them the resources that are needed. They're going to be out selling air fresheners, incense, bars of soaps, t-shirts, all of the resources that I have for them, they have access to go make an honest dollar. And I would like to say, if it wasn't for the mosque and the mosque structure of teaching me how to do for self, I don't know where I'll be right now.
Praise be to him. And for those who are watching, when you see this interview, we'll have in the comments section where you can find Brother Roosevelt on social media. If you have any printing needs, t-shirts, cups, whatever, you can get them, and I'm quite sure they can mail that to where you actually are as well. So support that business. And now we're going to bring up our brother Mujahid.
Praise be to Allah. 18 years later, the young children we had are now out of the nest. we empty nesters, and one is married with a child, so we have a grandchild now that's knocking on 2 years. My wife, who was once a stay-at-home mom, she's in a full-blown teaching profession. She's very passionate about that. So I'm in the midst of rebuilding my real estate portfolio and doing it a little different this time. Instead of just being a landlord, we are offering a path to home ownership and showing people how to be home owners and not just renters. And so fully active here in Muhammad's Mosque number 45. I'm in Texas, in the suburb here outside of Texas. And so we just thank Allah. Everything is great. And we just thank Allah for, the minister told us, he said, don't worry about those houses y'all lost, right? He said, Allah has something better in store for you. And so I bear witness, Allah has blessed us to come full circle. And we're extremely grateful for the trials, tribulations, and everything that we benefit from.
Praise be to Allah. And it's interesting how things come full circle. Just about 2 weeks ago, that brother Mujahid and sister Angel's son, brother Kareem, actually returned here to the city and sponsored and helped to organize a back to school giveaway.
Right.
And it was just beautiful, man. It was just beautiful and reaffirming to me as well, man. Like we can't doubt the seeds that have been placed in our children. So I was thankful for that, man, and thankful for each and every one of you all as well. So, and we're going to close out with our sister Rhodesia. So what's going on 18 years later?
Okay, so I have to make this brief. In 2013, I began writing for the Final Call newspaper. I've always said I came out of the womb writing. Always wanted to write. And now, I'm a professional at it, but writing for the Final Call helped me recognize my desire to tell people stories. And the Final Call allows us to tell it in a way no other outlet, newspaper, media is going to tell it, especially from the people affected perspective. So as a result of that, my desire to want to bring my work from paper to film, I was able to accomplish that. My film hit Tubi and Amazon Freevee January of this year. The movie's called Cairo's Egypt. Yay. Good job, Brother Willie. Cairo's Egypt. It's a love story. You can go to either one of Tubi or Amazon Freevee and watch the trailer, see if it's something you might want to watch. But I love Black love. So if you want some real Black drama and love and commitment and decision making, it has everything in it. Check me out. Check it out on Tubi and Amazon Freevee. It's for free. Don't have to pay anything to watch. That's where we at.
And I would say this: I had the opportunity to watch the actual movie. And one of the things I was impressed, I know our sister didn't have $1 million budget,
Nope.
a multi-million-dollar budget. But one of the things that I was very impressed with, and I'm not just saying this that because she's on here, was the quality of the actual film itself was amazing. And the actual acting. Because, sometimes we have those movies that don't have the budget, they can't get the best actors, but this was not the case. And I'm not saying this because she's on it. I really mean that. The acting was good and I actually enjoyed it. So, if we want to see Black love in a way that's not, what's the word I'm looking
today
for? Not depicted in this, what do you call this reality TV show-ish type of way, you know what I'm saying? I think this is a good movie for you all to go and check out. So I want to thank each and every one of you all for our guests that's actually who are on. And this has to be one of my favorite shows today, man. I think you all really did a great job. And as I was thinking, in the scripture, Jesus had the opportunity to heal, like, I think 10 lepers or whatever. And after he healed the 10, only one out of that 10 came back and said anything or testified about what Jesus did. You think about that, brother Mujai, I know you think about numbers. That's only 10% return, right? So the 90% didn't even come back to say thank you or to even say this man healed me. And I think in regards to what we just did tonight, you know, we'll believe as students of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad that we can beat prophecy. And I think what you all have done is something that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has said publicly. He said that his testimonies, his witness bearers are too damn quiet. But I can say today with the three of you all, when this goes out, because it's pre-recorded, this is not, you all have not been quiet. And I thank you all for what you all have been sharing. You all shared it before in the final call, but now we have the opportunity to put it in a visual way where more people can actually see it. So may Allah continue to bless each and every one of you all. May Allah continue to bless each and every one of the people who are watching this broadcast. And I'm signing out. This is another episode of I Have a Testimony from your brother Willie Muhammad. Peace.
God came to us to seek and to save that which was lost. He raised a man from among us.
He, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, laid the foundation. What I'm doing is something that comes from him through me, and the thing that he uses in me to do the work is my faith in him and the word that he taught. To produce men and women who wanted to clean up their life and build an independent nation for the glory of God.